Were you a good A&R man?
No, I was appalling. Terrible. The famous stories that often gets told is that I turned down Coldplay and Muse. It turns out we did. We needed more than one more. I remember going, whoa, hang on. Where's the wires going to go?
Yeah.
Would there be a socket on the bus? Would there be a socket for the button? There won't be any disc.
No CDs.
We're like, well, where would the artwork? And basically we kicked them out there. We said, go fuck yourselves. No. They were looking for 50 grand investment. Yeah, we found out later that they were involved in setting up Yahoo. And over redundancy drinks years later, one of the guys worked out that if we put 50 grand into that rather than making the second menswear album, we would all have been gazillionaires. The book was kind of from the point of view of an innocent young guy who enters the music industry and gradually gets corrupted, and it was so fucking boring. It didn't work until I wrote it from the point of view of Stel Fox, the guy who's completely corrupt and who loves it there.
Some weren't even born.
I mean, I couldn't quite explain to you why that band have stitched themselves into the soul of the British people.
Yeah.
Which is, you write about them, he writes for them.
Hi, welcome to Unloaded with me, Martin Deeson, the podcast where we talk to people who had an epic 1990s about what that decade meant to them. Today, author John Niven, whose book, Kill Your Friends, got to get the right one, Kill Your Friends, just embodied that decade. But first of all, how are you, John?
I'm very good, man. Very good.
Very grateful for you being here. You're a busy man.
Nice to be anywhere.
Nice to be in.
As Keith says.
That's always good. Let's quickly start with Kill Your Friends, though, because there's a lot of other stuff to talk about since. But I think that's the defining novel of the 1990s because it just brought together the drugs, the money, the excess, the pomposity, the whole thing. If you haven't read it, it's about the music industry and you go and buy it today. It's absolutely fucking brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
So it's based on your time, London Records?
At London Records, yeah, which began around 1994. I was just thinking, I nearly got your job. I tried to get your job, but Loaded, back around then. I think Loaded launched in May 94. I was working at a little indie label in Scotland, a dance label, and I very much wanted to get down to London. The two things, I was doing press for this dance label, and I'd written a bit of journalism for like The List, M8, Tenants Live News, or the Scottish music papers. And I saw it, I can't remember what it was, an advert for staff writer wanted for this new magazine launching, and it described the magazine a little bit. And I don't know if it was, I don't think it was even called Loaded then. It was like IPC.
Yeah, they didn't have a name, that's right, yes.
And anyway, I sent off a letter. Knowing James, as I know now, it's probably one of a million letters I received and just get flushed straight down the toilet. But anyway, I was just desperate to move to London at that point and get a gig. But we're going to see how different life might have been. Probably been the same for both of us. If we swapped jobs.
Wouldn't have gone into a drug-fueled industry. We'd have gone into a drug-fueled industry.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I never knew they advertised the job.
Yeah. And I remember
said that
writing
to James Brown.
I can't remember. I probably have mentioned that to James at some point.
He's coming on soon, so I'll have to.
Okay, well, he probably doesn't remember the letter, but I'd met him once or twice at that point via Bill Prince when I was in the Wishing Stones and an indie band. But yeah, I wanted to get to London as the 90s began. And then did so in another route, going to work for London Records.
So it could have been journalism, or it could have been music. So you've always, because you did English, I know you got. I always wanted to be a writer.
Always wanted to be a writer. And then, I got a first. When you get a first, it's kind of... I'm glad you dropped that in, thank you, Martin, because it's one of the... It's like having I imagine it's like having a foot-long penis. You can't really drop it in yourself. You need someone else. You don't announce it. By the way, I've got a first. So someone else has to say it for you.
At least I could do.
But when you get a first, you do the milk round and they introduce you to all the, employers. This would be a bit... When I graduated like 92-ish, and so you're meeting all these people that, Credit Suisse and Merchant Banks,
You did all that shit, right?
Yeah, well, I kind of, and I thought, I could do that because I was very greedy, you see. I wanted to earn a lot. I was
you already wanted money at that age?
Because I had 2 years out of uni to do the band. So by the time I was graduating, I was like 23, and I'd been a student and an indie musician, so I'd been penniless. Good. So I kind of thought I quite fancied earning some money. Right. But I was also incredibly lazy. So when you found out that when you work for a merchant bank, you got at your desk at like 6 a.m. or that industry kind of lifestyle, I was like, yeah, that's not happening. So
journalism.
So I was lazy and greedy, and then someone introduced the concept of A&R, and I thought, oh, perfect. It's
funny you say that because I've obviously over the last few weeks I've been dipping in and out of reading interviews with you and stuff. And in fact, I'll come on to it, I'm not saying like a fucking fanboy stalker, but over the years I've always kept a very close eye on your career because I've been so interested in how you were doing something that I'd kind of tried to do, which was change from a drug and booze monster in the 90s to writing books and stuff like that. And I didn't succeed, whereas you did, which is, we'll move on to that in a minute. But it's always been interesting to note that in the music industry, the behaviour was very much the same. There was, coke being done. I mean, it's hard for young people to realise coke being done on the desk in the office, openly, drink being done, parties in the office, which were creative, in your case, listening parties, and ours, feature ideas parties. And they came up with great ideas. But now the whole office would be cancelled and sent to prison. But the big difference was in the music industry, people were making a lot of money, right?
Well, then, I mean, the economics of it were rather different than they are. I mean, people are making a lot of money again now via streaming, but it's kind of different. Back then, you take a lot of guys in their early 20s and pay them colossal salaries, and it tends not to end well, does it? It tends to end in sort of rehab or tragedy. I think one has to be careful, because you talk about, of course, this was the 90s, everything was completely different. I think you could easily label it as called being in your 20s. Because, I heard a group of my wife's a little younger than me, and I heard a group of her friends talking, and one of them said something like, "Oh, you have to remember that this was in the noughties." But they had no idea about the 90s. They were just kids at school. But for them, the noughties were the 90s. I thought, gosh, I wonder, that's possibly right. Like, we could sit here and go, I don't think people are kidding it now. I reckon the young kids are still out there going berserk, I
mean, the noughties was quite 90s. I always think the 90s was kind of like the 60s, and the noughties was like the 70s, when it really got bloated and kind of really out of control.
Maybe there's something to that. I think you're right to say it. I don't think it's as blatant as it was, acceptably blatant as it was back then.
I'd be surprised.
Here's the thing. I think drinking culture, that's changed a lot over the decades. Because when I look at my parents' generations in terms of drinking, they drank way, drinking at lunch, drinking at 6 o'clock was cocktail hour, that kind of culture. I still live like that a bit, but I'm aware I'm a kind of throwback in a way with that. I like, I mean, don't get me wrong, at our age, you have to clear the diary if you're going to be drinking at lunch. There has to be nothing, used to be you get panelled at lunch, you happily go back to work and then go out in the evening, right? That's not happening now. As Kingsley Amis famously says, when you reach a certain age, lunch is dinner. That's it. That's your shot. It's all over after that. But I think now that back in the 90s, you'd go to the pub at lunchtime where you'd start certainly drinking there, leaving that. I think that's all, like my son's generation, I notice he works for Formula One. He has to work a lot harder. Like, it's a serious, it's a real job. Whereas, let's face it, man, we had kind of comedy jobs to the degree that, we weren't, the wheels of industry weren't rising or falling.
It's also what I always find remarkable about, because when I talk to younger people now, that our jobs, yes, for sure. I mean, of course. But on the other hand, also, I wouldn't get in till 10:30, but I wouldn't leave till 10 at night either. I would generally party all day in the office, and then as it cleared out a bit,
you get the
writing, and get the kind of work done. But working absolutely fucked. I mean, pissed and high and everything.
Yeah, I think that kind of behaviour, if it goes on now, which I'm sure it does, has become maybe more under the counter.
That's what I was going to say. I think it works. Because it did work. I mean, there was great music being made by all the record companies, and great magazines and comedy and all the big fashion, all those big industries where that stuff was going on, because everyone was at it all the time. And that kind of works. You have great ideas. Someone passes out for a while, you leave them on the floor, pick them up. If it's just you on your own doing a crafty line in the loo cubicle and coming out to an office of straight people.
That's called addiction, my friend.
That's trash. That doesn't.
Yeah, if the coke's on the table and everyone's doing it, then it's a party.
Exactly, it's not addiction. But listen, so you were an A&R man at London and then Independiente.
Yep, correct.
Were you a good A&R man?
No, it was appalling, terrible. I had no, what was the word? No reasonable commercial instinct, The famous story that often gets told is that I turned down Coldplay and Muse, which it's not true as it's told. It's often told as if I had those bands sitting in my office, right. Like, you can't sing, you can't play, you look awful. I did the Kit Kat guy, It wasn't like that. I just got the demos the same time everyone else did. And didn't quite get them, But this was a recurring mistake of mine in A&R. I remember when I heard the early Coldplay and the early Muse demos, they sounded this was like sort of B97 around this time, and they sounded very Radiohead. Yeah. And I liked Radiohead, but I thought, we need another one. It turns out we did. We needed more than one
I
more.
read some quote from you where you said you didn't realise the insatiable appetite for to the bottom of the
Yeah, bottom of the barrel.
of a photocopy,
Yeah.
of a photocopy, of a photocopy, of a photocopy.
Which is a
It's
line
a really good way of putting it.
It's a line that ended up in Kill Your Friends when I came to write that novel.
Oh, is it?
And that,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
the idea of boy bands, you know, I'd have thought, well, we've got to take
Yeah.
that. We've got his 70s,
Yeah.
that, then, you know, his boys and his Westlife. It just keeps going and going and
Yes.
going. I'd always underestimate the public's appetite for,
That's
you know,
interesting.
the same thing.
It's funny because people understand money. I think they do understand that kind of thing because it always made me laugh when Loaded was at IPC, who were the biggest magazine company. They'd launch something successful, like literally Caravan Monthly, and it would do well. So then they'd launch Caravan Weekly, Mobile Home Monthly. Just divide their own market, which is it's capitalism at heart, isn't it? You make competition within your own thing, I guess, or something.
Yeah,
like
but
so
it's
you don't
kind
understand that shit. But,
it's kind of crazy, isn't it? You're making a weaker, diluted version of.
And the story that I thought was interesting was because we were both there, you in music and me in magazines, at a time of huge transition that you didn't know was a time of huge transition. Someone came into the office and said, look, guys, this is the internet. And it was like, down the page. And I thought, well, you know, whatever. You know, went to Condé Nast or GQ and just didn't engage with it then at all. But of course, that was the end of both industries. And I've heard someone came to you saying, do you want to put 200 grand into Yahoo at the time?
It wasn't quite like, well.
I remember going on other things you've said.
No. Well, it's funny because I look now when, you know, I still know people who work in the music industry, and the whole marketing conversation is what's happening on TikTok, what's happening on Instagram, what we're doing there.
Yeah.
It used to, when I left the record industry, which I guess was 2002, 3, you'd have the marketing meeting, it was still like posters and the video and traditional stuff. And then at the very end, you go, online, and somebody go, oh, we'll make a website. And that would be it. You know, now 90% of the meeting is all this kind of this digital stuff. But yeah, we didn't, I'm going back to about 94, 95 here when these American guys came in to chat to us at London Records, really early. And they were talking about how the internet was going to change our business in the future. And we were about, is it? Nah, I don't think so. And they're going, well, in the future, kids will be able to download music and they'll do it on their computers, their laptops, and they'll do it anyway. You know,
so they saw the whole thing.
They said they'll be doing it on buses or in airports and trying to be like, this was still the time of dial-up. Yeah. So we were like, I remember going, whoa, hang on, where's the wires going to go?
Yeah.
Would there be a socket on the bus? Would there be a socket for the button?
Because that's pre-iPod, isn't it?
iPod had, pre-iPod,
yeah, late night.
But just the idea of wireless was just, I'm like, hang on, you plug your laptop in, you had to still plug, and they're like, no, everything's going to be wireless by then. And we were like, okay. Wow. But laughing, you know? Yeah. And then he goes, and we're going, but where would so you download it onto your computer and then you print it onto a disc and that comes there. No, there won't be any disc.
No CDs.
We're like, well, how do you, where would the artwork go? And they were going, there won't be any artwork. And we're looking at each other going, this guy's off his nut. Yeah. And I remember him saying, look, the kids just want to hear that song they like. They don't care about all the stuff you think's important. And we're like, yeah, right.
They really fucking got it.
Yeah. Those guys were so much smarter than us. We were literally, we're the chimps in 2001 at this point, sort of screeching around the obelisk. And this goes on. And I think the final thing he said was, this was pre-Napster. I can't remember how it ended. Basically, we kicked them out there. We said, go fuck yourselves. You know, they were looking for 50 grand investment. Yeah, we found out later that they were involved in setting up Yahoo. And over redundancy drinks years later, one of the guys worked out that if we put 50 grand into that rather than making the second menswear album, we would all have been gazillionaires.
Gazillionaires squared. Whereas, of course, the second menswear album is an absolute classic.
Which has its moments, but it didn't make us all rich, Martin.
No. But then something did, because then I'm interested in that transition you made. So like you're there doing all that. You're in a very druggy, hardcore industry. Are you, number one, are you deliberately thinking, are you walking around thinking this is going to make a fucking great novel one day? And also, are you walking around going, I fucking hate this, I want to be a writer? How did you make that transition?
It was probably more from the second point you made there. I wasn't early on. What was age? I was maybe 26 when I went to London Records. I was just having a ball. I wasn't really thinking in terms of, I will, I'll be making notes for my fabulous novel one day. But then I had always wanted to be a writer. And as I remember as I turned 30, after a few years in it, I started to think, you're going to be in my 30s now. Hangovers start to bite a wee bit more around that age. And also I was thinking down the road, Because already I had an inkling I wasn't very good at the job at that point. I thought, am I going to be the guy in the bad leather jacket come 1999, 2000 at the back of the Camden Falcon, who's kind of not quite sure of this bag? Because, you know, when you're young, you know instinctively.
You meet a lot of in the music industry, right?
You do. I'm the guy in the bad jacket who doesn't quite get the band, and it's got a good beat, kids. Do I want to be that guy?
Yes.
And also the idea that I'd try and be a writer, that I hadn't done it. I mean, you know the odds. I'm sure you, in any creative industry, whether it's records or publishing, you know the millions who are trying to do it and don't get anywhere. Or, you know, for the millions of bands who send you demos, there's a few thousand get signed, there's a few hundred maybe sell some records, and there's a tiny number that actually makes some real money.
It's like podcasts.
Yeah. Or any creative effort.
Yeah.
So it seemed to me, I tried to write a novel, I was doomed to fail, you know. And that is certainly the likely
attitude.
It seems like it's the likely outcome.
Yeah.
And but in the end, and also I'd stumbled at a university into this job in the record industry at its peak, where we were all massively overpaid. A company car, I didn't even know how you taxed a car. I was 30 years old. I thought the secretary came round every year and put a disc in your desk. I just didn't know. And everything went expenses, and I had no idea the real world was entered my 30s. And I wasn't in a rush to give that up in some ways. But in the end, I kind of thought, if I don't try and... I kind of thought, is there a world where I sort of cling on in the music industry? And we're getting into the 2000s now, like 2002, 2003.
Yeah.
And the corporatization is starting to happen, where these labels are all accumulating each other. And it's either you've got to go off and be an indie maverick and not pay, or you've got to know how to climb the corporate ladder. And I wasn't really either of those guys.
Yeah.
So I started to think, if I cling on in some job and try and write the book in my spare time, that could take 10 years, you know. I thought, I had enough money to live on, maybe for 2 years.
Right.
I thought, that's fine, there's plenty of time for me to, I'll write the Great British Novel in that time, and like, great, no problem. Of course, in the end, it took more than 5 years, and I was like flying on vapours, on fumes, and living on the largesse of my girlfriend, the lovely Helen at the time. I was absolutely potless. And then when I eventually finished the novel that became Kill Your Friends, we got turned down by about 17 publishers. So it was like, oh my God, what have I done?
Because I didn't realize, I was reading something the other night that Caitlin Moran wrote, that because you've worked together on something, and I didn't know that it's always talked about as your debut novel, but actually it was your breakthrough novel.
Yeah.
You did one before about the band called
Music from Big Pink.
Music from Big Pink, yeah.
Which that book kind of saved my arse.
Was that a novel or was that
It was a novella, it was a short novel.
Novella about the band making that album.
Yeah. Well, it's actually about a drug. It's about a drug dealer. Actually, there's an idea that occurred to me in the 90s, because I'm sure I saw the phenomenon, as I'm sure you did firsthand, Martin, of the level of entree that drug dealers get. Like, you're the first guy in the dressing room after the show. You're in the limo, you're on the private jet. You kind of, you are, you know. It looks like a great place to be when you're 25, 30. I didn't see life panning out great for a lot of these guys.
Got a great trajectory.
They tended not to get to 50, think I shall now retire, happy with all my cash and enjoy my children. Exactly. They tended to either...
The dean who saves money. I've met one ever.
They tended to live very high in the hog and then either die or become penniless drug addicts. Or prison, yes. Of course. So I thought that's quite an interesting trajectory, that life curve of the drug dealer from the age of sort of 25 to 45, what happens over that life. But I wanted to wrap it around a real band. Because it struck me, it's very hard, fictionalised bands, especially if you've worked in the industry. Yeah. You know the tropes so well, it's hard to get it right.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I'd been trying to write Kill Your Friends and couldn't get it to work.
Right.
Partly for that reason, and partly because I guess I was writing it from the original draft of the book was kind of from the point of view of an innocent young guy who enters the music industry and gradually gets corrupted, and it was so fucking boring. I can't tell you how bad this book was. It didn't work until I wrote it from the point of view of Stell Fox, the guy who's completely corrupt and who loves it there. You know, then the book
who is a
worked.
Brilliant character. Yeah, to have a lead character and a viewpoint in the novel that is someone you
reprehensive.
It's just great. It's
and I wrote that. That's what made the book work. But I had to put it to one side, and I went off and wrote Music from Big Pink. So the 90s had just ended. I guess I started writing this book in 2001. And yeah, it came out in 2005. And it was a tiny little American publisher called Continuum. It's then republished by Bloomsbury in more recent years, but it sold just enough, and I got enough advance, and then we sold the film rights around then, and between all that was like enough money.
So then you're a working author.
I was a working author, and then Kill Your Friends came out, and
let's remember at that time there were advances. I mean, if you're starting now as a novelist, so I was going to say at the time, because what fascinates me is how you made that transition from the hard drinking, hard partying industry into being a writer. Because my situation was I was doing that as a writer, but journalism, you can do 3,000 words when you haven't slept or there's booze around or whatever. It's all still going on. So I tried to get to the point of, right, I've got a book advance, £35,000 for a first book. I mean, now it's inconceivable, isn't it? Never fucking finished it. I couldn't. Well, what you've just said, you see, makes it, you say, you had to completely redo Kill Your Friends, the viewpoint and everything. And I'm always so impressed with that kind of writing, that you have that ability just to go, right, that's shit, rather than going, oh, fuck it, rugged, that's shit, right, to redo it and start from the beginning. So how you made that transition from greedy man to the hard work.
Well, the thing you're talking about there is the idea that rewriting is writing. I sort of managed to learn that lesson quite early on. It's not easy, because but that thing of when you finish the first draft, to have to come back to page 1 and begin again, it's the most painful part of the process. But it's kind of, you learn, for most of us, it's necessary. But what I did learn at the end of the 90s, as I started trying to write seriously, was that I couldn't do it with a hangover. So my previous MO of I'd be writing in the evenings and drinking whiskey and thinking I was fabulous, and then waking up in the morning and going, oh God, half of this is dog shit. I have to, that ratio. I mean, famously Paul Schrader wrote Taxi Driver like that. He would drink a bottle of bourbon and do 2 or 3 grams of coke and write all night and get 30 pages, of which he'd edit sober the next day, and he'd keep maybe 3.
And Bruce Robinson with Withnail says that he used to wake up in the morning and he'd find scenes that are in the film and go, who the fuck wrote that? And he would type with his nose. So I listened to all the fucking bad guys. I should have known you.
He would famously, Bruce Robinson said, he'd have to drink a couple of bottles of wine before he could really start writing. He'd be forcing it down at 10 in the morning. He didn't even want me.
What a pro.
He's a trooper. But I found that I couldn't write with a hangover, because you're trying to will this entire world into being that didn't exist. It's a confidence act, especially when you're writing that first unpublished book, because a voice is always there saying, nobody cares. Nobody's going to care about this. What are you doing? Why are you wasting your time on this? And you have to quiet that voice down. And I found I couldn't do it where I was crippled with the sort of self-loathing of a hangover. So a thing that helped was I moved out of London around then. This would be like, again, Helen, my girlfriend at the time, her mum had a big house out in Buckinghamshire, and it was big enough that we could go and live there, the two of us, rent free. And the plan was we were going to do it for 6 months or a year. I think we wound up there for 3 or 4 years. But at first it was very difficult, because I'd lived in sort of Notting Hill and Maida Vale for like 10 years. And I was used to the endless part of London being on your doorstep. And the first few months out in the sticks, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go insane. But I kind of fought through that, and I came to love it, to the point where I couldn't imagine moving back in full time.
And did the proper thing of just getting up every morning, sober.
I was fortunate enough in that between having enough money away for a year or two, and then between the generosity of Helen and Stephanie, my ex-wife, who I had a son with at the time, being very tolerant about the fact that I was earning next to no money. I managed. I don't know if I quite did the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing, but over those 3 or 4 years, I must have come close to it, because I would get up every morning, sort of 6 days a week, and write from 9 till sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon every day. And as I say, I wrote one draft, Kill Your Friends, and binned it, and then I went off and wrote Big Pink, and then I come back and wrote another draft. So it was kind of 3 books, effectively.
And you got one of those, do you have like a set word count or an hour?
Yeah. Very quickly, I sort of realised if I'm working well, I'll get 1,500, 2,000 words a day, but never less than 1,000. 1,000 would be the absolute minimum. And if I also noticed when I didn't have a hangover, I'd get those 1,500 words in like 2 or 3 hours done. If you're sort of crippled with a hangover, you're tapping away, it'd probably take you till lunchtime or the afternoon.
Honestly, your experience, because it definitely, I was keeping an eye, because you were doing so well And around sort of late 2000s, I'd had this book advance. I read an interview with you where you said something like, being a writer is really easy. You said, you just have to get up in the morning and be in good shape at your desk. And I was like, that's where I'm going wrong. And like you, that's what I found. It was the hangover. You could make for quite spiky, fiery writing, but the lack of confidence in your own skills. So I eventually was like, shit, I'm just so overdue with this book. I need to get out of London.
Was this a novel you were writing?
No, it was non-fiction. I had everything going for it. Ed Victor was my agent.
Oh, wow.
And it was his idea. He said, do a book called Pleasure Principles, which was to go around the world looking at people having extreme relationships with pleasure. So like an S&M scene in LA, perhaps. Some people in France who eat tiny birds with things over their heads, that kind of thing. So I get this chunky book advance, get it, party for a couple of months, pay a big tax bill, and then I'm like, shit, I've only got about $5,000 left. That's not enough to go around the world. Okay, right, what I'll do, I need to get out of London. I went to live in a caravan in Wales. Too extreme. Too extreme. I had a really miserable time. And so I kept looking, oh, bloody John Niven, how's he done this? I'm living vicariously through you.
Well, I think what happened was, like I say, conference get turned down by a lot of people, and then finally at the 11th hour we had Random House come in and did the deal, and then the book was a bestseller.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought I'd managed to kick this door open, and what age would be then? I was probably turning 40. Yeah, maybe, yeah.
It's like I saw someone say 40, very old for an A&R man.
But not that old for a writer, yeah. And I remember thinking, I've got a shot, I've got a chance here. I've got my foot in the door. And so I just went hell for leather. And I think I wrote 5, 6 novels over the next.
Second Coming was the next one I read. Was that the next one?
That was The Amateurs.
Oh,
it was The Amateurs after Cow Friends, and then The Second Coming.
Which is great. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. That was the biggest selling book internationally.
Was it? That's funny.
I think that book, we got 250,000, 300,000 in Germany alone.
It's one of those ideas that it's about
the return of Jesus.
When Jesus came back.
Yeah.
Which is so you get it in 2 lines. That's the idea. Well, there's such a great idea.
Jesus ends up on X Factor. It's basically that was the sort of elevator pitch.
Yeah.
But no, I kind of felt like I'd got a shot, and I wasn't going to let it go,
And then Single White Male?
Straight White Male.
Yeah, Straight White Male, which I really loved when I read that. That sort of really seemed to embody that kind of... that's the thing, you're very good, a bit like Irvin Welsh, you're very good at embodying really fucked up men being funny and being quite sort of entertaining in their sort of self-abuse and their abuse of people around them. But you've also got a moral compass. It's almost like a sort of being possessed kind of thing. Do you see that? Are you
no, I know why you'd say that. I think that's what you kind of have to do if you're a real novelist.
Right.
You have to kind of enter that zone where you become, when you're writing it, you are the character.
Do you? Do you live it sort of method acting kind of way?
Yeah, you kind of do. It's a great privilege of the job. Some might call it like mad escapist fantasy, but you're definitely acting. For instance, I'm writing my latest novel, The Fathers. We just sold the TV rights. I'm writing the pilot just now. So I was working on that this morning before I came to meet you, and you do sit there and sort of bring to yourself playing out sort of scenes. You do kind of, it's a strange way to spend your time, one could argue. Also, the other thing is sometimes if my wife and I are having an argument, I'll say something that's excessively outrageous for the situation, and she'll just say, "Just stop trying fucking dialogue out," and you just get, because she knows I'm kind of got that line. Maybe I think I could almost work here and I'll slip it in and see what the rejoinder is. But she's wise to me.
That's what it's like living with. Must be for her like living with Daniel Day-Lewis when he's doing a film.
Well, I think
let's
not go over him.
I'm so glad you wrote that, because I'm reading that now and I'm really enjoying The Fathers.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of things to ask about. One, someone who knows you quite well, because there's 2 main characters. For anyone who's not read it, it came out this summer. It's really great. It's essentially about 2 fathers in Glasgow from different sides of the tracks, and how their lives interweave in tragedy and drama and comedy through it. So it's about father, but it's also got a really strong plot about Jada, who's the kind of like schemy lunatic guy living on crime, and Dan, isn't it, who's a successful writer, funnily enough. And so someone said to me, who knows you, said, that's both of those are John. Dan's who he's become, and Jada who he would have been. Is that a bit unfair?
Does that come from Irvin?
I'm not going to say, but luckily you guessed the wrong person.
Oh, wow. Well, that is kind of true to say. When I grew up, I'm surrounded by a lot of Jadas, and
Right.
had I turned a certain direction out the schoolyard, I might well have, been more of a Jada. But I don't. I kind of got a love for books at quite a young age, and was always going to go to university, I think. But then you do that. The self-middle classifying process of going to university and then moving to London, and then suddenly you know what Parmesan is and you know what garlic is, and it's all over.
And a real gap between yourself and the people at home. And
Well, not so much because I've still got a core group of maybe 10 guys who I grew up with, who we still have a house in Scotland, and I'm back there quite a lot. So we still get together a lot, We'll be going out at Christmas, I don't doubt. And it's not really made any. Every time you see these guys, it's like it could have been yesterday that we were all,
It's funny. It was me and my brother. If you met us in the same room, you're just like, which from whatever your standpoint is, you're like, well, one of them's a complete ponce. I mean, you look at my brother and go, bloody hell, he's like a Viking, my brother.
All right.
He's got catering. It was very,
yeah.
But of course, we couldn't be closer. We're absolutely close. And of course, you've done an amazing book. I hear, because I must admit, I couldn't bring myself to read it yet because I'm nervous about reading something that sounds so raw about your brother.
Brother.
His death by his own hand.
Yeah.
Your brother, which that whole subject, and I've seen you mention it in interviews. I know a few parents who've had kids that have tried it. Really is just brave to go there. But you both kind of went different paths, right? And he took more of a Jada-ish?
No, that's fair to say. Fun enough, I was thinking about this the other day when I knew I was coming on to do the show, because your starting point for the podcast is kind of the 90s.
Yeah.
And my brother and I got closer in points in the 90s than we'd ever been. In the 80s, you see, he was a sort of what we call a Ned in Scotland, like a townie. He was like into Spandau Ballet and whatever, and wore waffle cut jumpers and Pringle sweaters, and he was a a Ned, and I was kind of more indie alternative. We like the Mary Chain, like kind of and then as the 90s began, you had the whole Manchester thing happening, the Mondays and the Roses, and my brother and his mates started getting into those sort of bands, and then club culture exploded, and suddenly I bump into my brother in the sub club, both off of nut and pills, and with that period where we suddenly, through the sort of early to mid 90s, we were closer than we'd been in the 80s or were subsequently, and then that kind of I think a lot of people didn't, as you know this yourself, I'm sure, didn't crawl out of the 90s in great shape. There was a lot, I think, people, should we say, used up maybe a lifetime supply of serotonin in quite a short window.
I think people underestimate that even now. I mean, I'm 60, I think you're 59, right? I still see friends and some aspects of my own. I'm like, why the fuck do I sometimes feel this, that, or that? I'm like, do you know what? I think there's still a few fucking deficiencies there from the various things that we did to ourselves, particularly if you carried on into the 2000s.
Yeah.
This stuff has a long-term effect. It's great, but you think he suffered from a sort of overpillage?
I think he definitely had a sort of slightly balance that he had it quite hard for a long time. And there's also that thing of it's a natural thing for a lot of men as they get into middle age. I think when I was researching that book, I found that 42, I think when I was writing the book, 42 was the median peak age for male suicide. And I think the reason for that is, who can't have a great time in their 20s and their 30s when you're young and you're full of kind of adrenaline and the kind of future's all glimmery? I think when you get to your 40s, there's a period where in your early 40s, there's still a lot of life left to live, a lot of road to run. But the glory days of your youth look so far ago and they're not coming back that you're kind of stuck in this period where, like, is there enough left to live? I think a lot of people reach that thing of thinking, there's a long, boring road ahead that's not
I scribbled down in my notes just this morning or something, because it's really stayed with me from Father. There's a image you use there about the breeches boy.
Yeah.
Right, so like for people who don't know, when you're transferring someone from a ship to a ship in sea, they put out a rope across, and it looks like a hair-raising thing. So you go one by one in a kind of little scoopy thing and go across. And you've obviously done it because you used to be a sea cadet, right? I done my research.
Actually, air cadet, but
air cadet. My research. I will fire another researcher. Okay, you also got a good imagination being a novelist, and there's a bit when you're halfway across, you say, analogous to being 40, when, because the waves are up on either side, you can't see the ship you've come from, and you can't see the one you're going to. And I remember that clearly. But now at sort of 60, Unfortunately, I can see the ship I'm going to, which is a whole other fucking problem.
And it's not ideal.
It's not. Right there. But there is that bit in the middle. I felt very old at 40. I remember thinking, I haven't made it as a book writer. I've not done that. Journalism is kind of collapsing for the internet. What am I going to kind of do next? Thankfully, about the time I met my wonderful wife, and it all kind of fell together, and it's all wonderful now.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a scary point for men, I think. I'd never thought of it till I saw that image.
Yeah.
And that was your brother's age when things went wrong.
When he killed himself, he was exactly 42 when he killed himself. I think he just couldn't, there'd been a lot of fun in his past and he couldn't see a lot of fun in his future, And also, he didn't have much in his life in terms of, I was really lucky, like the guys I was talking about a minute ago in Scotland, when we were all teenagers, we all sort of discovered the NME together, and through that there was a window into this other world, not just of music, but, if you remember, they did Portrait of the Artist, The Consumer, and bands would talk about their favourite drinks, movies, all this, TV programmes, books. You found out about all this other stuff, and we all get into literature, we all get into movies, and all these things are things that enrich your life.
Yeah.
And my brother didn't really get that. He didn't really have that. And I think a lot of guys don't, and that's fine if you fill it with family and work. You do your job, you go and take care of your kids. Maybe you don't need to be catching up with the latest David Lynch movie or whatever the fuck. Yeah. But I think if you reach middle age, you haven't got a family around you, wasn't seeing his ex or his kids, and you haven't got a job and he was unemployed. It's just a bit of a barren wasteland of where. See, I'm naturally quite lazy. If I could just read books and watch films and play golf, I'd be perfectly content. I wouldn't,
apart from the golf.
I wouldn't need anything else. Yeah. Unfortunately, because of the 4 kids thing, I got to work. But
I think what you say, isn't that? Without sounding too, South Bank shows, that is so true that people, when they are depleted from having all that fun and your chemicals are all imbalanced, if you've got a window on that through films and through culture and through reading and stuff, you have a bit of a self-awareness and like, oh, I'm a bit fucking depressed because of that. Go for a walk. You just have some of the basic tools, I think, that perhaps if you're a bloke, as I understand he was living on his own, not with someone. And I thought it was very affecting. I read an interview where you said, or I think it must be in the book, that obviously, like a lot of people in that situation, money worries were a huge thing for him. And I think people who've never been poor can't understand quite. It's about bereavement. If you're unchild and having children, if you haven't ever been poor and worried about it, you can't understand what an absolutely bone-crushing terror that is. And simple things like the shit that if you can't afford to pay your electricity bill, they put you on a fucking key.
Yeah.
I've had that where, it runs out in the middle of the night, you're living there in candlelight, but they charge you more for the electricity. It is just disgusting and criminal.
I only
Online
found that,
gambling I feel similar about as well. It's a tax on poverty.
I only found that out in the wake of his death because we were trying to move my sister around his house trying to get this is taking a dark turn.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on.
We were trying to get the electricity on it when Martin, I said, you have to go to the sheaf, you have to go to the shop and put money in this purple key. And so we did, and it still wouldn't come on. And it found out that he was in arrears. And so what we were putting on the key wasn't denting the arrears, But then I found out what he was being charged per unit for. Right? That's like 3 times what I have to pay. It's like insane,
Anyway, let's move
Moving on from
the
suicide in the late period capitalism.
Let's talk about Fatherhood again as well, because I didn't until you said it just then, I didn't know what your situation was with kids and stuff like that. But I knew within 2 pages of reading Fatherhood, because you open up Fatherhood, and I think it's Dan, and he says he's just witnessed his wife giving birth after a long struggle with IVF. And obviously it's a very happy moment for him, but he's imagining who would have made the scene he just witnessed, and he settles on Cronenberg.
Yeah.
That's a man who's seen some births. I've only been to 2, but bloody hell.
It's
a thing. So you've got 4 kids, right?
Yeah.
And what's your spread?
We spread from 29 down to 4.
Oh, you go further down than me.
It's a fair range, mate.
So I'm 34 to 7.
There you go.
How are you? How is the older father thing?
Well, thankfully, as I told my wife, a little younger than me, Charlotte's, younger than I am. But I told her at the time I'm going to have to kind of be parent emeritus, like a visiting professor of parenthood, rather than at the coalface lecturing. But did
you manage to negotiate that deal?
To a degree. But the thing is, when I was writing this new novel, The Fathers, part of the reason I was doing it as I was very conscious that with our youngest, Morty, who's 4, it was going to be definitely the last time through this process.
Yeah.
And everything sort of grows in significance. Like, we just last week, he got his first proper bed. We got rid of his cot. And I was very conscious that's the last time I'll, put up or take down a cot, and like, those little things. So I was when I was writing this novel, Fathers, I was kind of wanting to commemorate a lot of those moments. It seemed to me, it was a bit of an open goal. I didn't see a lot of men writing about this, about fatherhood, like women.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot who write brilliantly about the whole experience. And I want to see a lot of guys writing, especially about the joy and tenderness of early fatherhood, which I wanted to sort of, I guess, capture,
Would you think that experience is different doing it? I mean, my daughter now at 53, my first daughter at 24, and there was all that magic at 24, but it kind of was overshadowed by what I was thinking about. Oh, this means I'll never be a cowboy. I'll never go and explore the outback. I wanted to go to the pub now, and I can't. Whereas at 53, I don't know. Both of them has been a great experience. And my first daughter, I'm incredibly close to, and our closeness grew. Even more later, I think. But this one now, I'm a bit like you. Every moment seems to me like she'll never do that again. She'll never do that again. You've got the attention for it. Are you loving it?
I think that's an integral part of an older dad. I mean, when Robin was born, I was 29, so I was still, if you will, in the heat of my own career. And
I think that including you split up pretty quickly.
Yeah,
right?
we did.
Me too.
But also, I was a very unreliable narrator, witness, whatever you want to say at that age. It was, again, when I moved out of London and started writing, I became a bit more a responsible parent towards Robin, would have been maybe 5 or 6 at that point.
Yeah.
So I think I pulled it back.
I think you still did the weekend
in time. Well, and we managed to save it on the line, I think, but I think had I continued the way I was when he was born, it could have been really bad. But as you say now, when you do it at this age, you one's inclined. Well, I was going to say one's inclined to savour everything a bit more, but then again, at our age, you're kind of savouring everything a bit more.
God, that's so true.
Enjoy every sandwich, is Warren Zevon.
Is that what Warren Zevon? Honestly, I went for a walk around these streets here before meeting you, and it's so true, isn't it? I'm walking around and I'm like having a poetic experience. It's like being in New York in the Lower East Side in the early 1990s. It's a bit wild around here today. It's true. Everything slows down a bit at this age and becomes a little bit more like savour. It might be my last apricot.
Oh, God.
But listen, dragging it back to the 1990s, you've got The Battle. You've written the play called The Battle, which is about the Oasis and Blur rivalry, which was that 95?
95, yeah.
95.
Summer of.
When, as we all remember, the music press created this and the tabloid press really created this kind of artificial rivalry between the two. So tell us a bit about it. I mean, who's in it, the characters? Is it Damon and...
Well, I was approached by the producer, I'm going back 3 years now, so it was before the Oasis reunion tour.
Okay, right, that's good time.
Because obviously I've been accused of cashing in that, but I began the first draft 3 years ago.
In fact, it's them cashing in on you.
That's right, but... And he said, "Do you think there's a play in this in the battle for number 1 between Blur and Oasis?" And initially I said I didn't think there was. I suspected what he wanted was Britpop ! The musical.
Yeah,
and that's not really what I do.
Yeah,
but I thought about it, and then I thought there could be a really funny sort of sub-David Mamet play about men screaming at each other in hot rooms about something that when you pull the camera back a little, it was just ridiculous. It was two pop records. So I pitched that sort of take to him. And he said, yeah, sure. So went back and forward. So the play basically jumps between the two camps, between the Blur camp and the Oasis camp, as that summer. And you'll remember yourself that it was one of the hottest. I think it was the hottest summer since '76, the summer of '95.
Yeah.
So as this hot summer progresses, the rivalry between these two bands intensifies. Because if you go back and look at, and I was around, I was there for all of this. I was at the Brits in those years. I was kind of when it was in February '95. You had Damon standing up there saying this should have been shared with Oasis at at the Brits.
Yeah.
And Noel that night said, that was great of him to say that. It's us in Blur Against the World. That's in February. And yet you get to July and it's he should get AIDS and fucking die from Noel about a Damon.
Before we just finish up, what do you think about the fact that when I decided to do this podcast, which is it's been about a year in the gestating, I didn't know Oasis. I think they were just planning just when I first thought of this. And I didn't. And then Miranda Sawyer did a book about 90s music. And just suddenly, as happens, I suppose, that's being a journalist and a writer, isn't it? You actually latched onto the zeitgeist. The next thing I knew, the 90s was actually becoming quite a phenomenon. Oh, it's because the Loaded documentary, that's when I first thought of it. And that was very popular. What do you think about that? The fact that it just seems to be, which I never thought would happen, looking back to the 90s as some sort of golden age of pre-digital
Well, I think
lunacy.
It's probably right on schedule, isn't it? Sort of 30 years since the midpoint. Because when I was back in the 90s, we were all kind of obsessed with the 60s. We were all kind of, wow. And and you guys were too. I think it was all kind of, the 66 World Cup, the Italian Job, or the Michael Caine as Harry Palmer, Michael Caine. All the sort of totems of cool for us then were from exactly 30, all the mid-60s. So it's bang on schedule now.
Isn't it? It's exactly what happens. Yeah. So if you want to get your early 2000s book ready.
Well, some things transcended. I mean, I've got my teenage daughter, Leila's 17, my son, Robin, who's 29. They both love Oasis. They both, we had tickets for the first night at Wembley and I gave them to the kids to go and I went later. Funnily enough, I went to see them in Edinburgh with everyone Welsh. So that was
Did you?
That was a 90s extravaganza that night.
I feel it's stupid because I loved Oasis at the time and that was very unfashionable to say that for quite about 15 years. I just thought they were great. And when this tour was announced, I'm not a big fan of stadium gigs.
Me neither.
And I thought, I'm not thinking I'm going to do that. And I didn't realise, now I've seen the videos, and Irvin, when I interviewed him, talked very movingly about, it's not often you get a whole fucking room of people together, vast room, having this, unifying experience, like you sometimes get with the football and stuff like that. And I kind of slightly wish I'd gone now. Was it a magical experience?
It was wild seeing 80,000 people who knew every single word to every single one of 20 songs.
Some weren't even born.
I mean, I couldn't quite explain to you why that band have stitched themselves into the soul of the British people to the degree they have, because Blur came back and did 2 nights at Wembley. That was great. I mean, Oasis could have played Wembley for a month every night and not touch the sides. I suspect some of it's to do with Liam and because the magnetism of Liam. But I think to my kids, knows a bit what their dad is, just like a grumpy old guy. He's like, very funny, but but Liam, there's something of to Liam, to my daughter and son, is like a legend, just Stone Cold. There's this kind of,
it's the Lennon thing. You'd love to hear.
There's just this strange magnetism that's kind of.
Noel's got the McCartney thing of actually doing the fucking hard work and being very good, and Liam's got this just sort of animal thing on the stage. And also, they always, even in the 90s, the fact that the lyrics, I always thought, without being a ponce, Shakespearean, because they had this way of speaking to everyone's human condition in quite vague terms. I'm rolling down the corridor faster than a cannonball. It does. When you've been off your tits in a hotel, you think, that's me. It has a way of speaking.
In the play, Justine Frischmann is explaining to Damon why Oasis might eventually be bigger than him, and she says she's talking about the great British public, and she says, you write about them, he writes for them. I think
so good, because I always, at the time, I liked Blur as well, but I always thought they were slightly trying the clothes on a bit. It was like, I had part life, it wasn't really quite as lived.
No, I love Blur. I love both bands, which was kind of.
Actually, I'm trying to get Alex James on, so I have to also say they're fucking amazing.
But I think they were just a very different thing. I think they were kind of, they dealt in conceptuals a little more than Oasis were,
That's why the rivalry was always a little bit
intense.
Yeah.
I think they're friends now, though, aren't they?
Yeah, sure they are. John, it's been really great having you on.
Man, thank you for that.
Very grateful for you coming.
I feel like, I don't know if I talked enough about the 90s, but
I don't want to bang on about that industry. It's just a way of getting people to listen to it.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm sorry to steering you into the heavy stuff in the middle as well. But
no, I'm always.
Honestly, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have finally met, and I'm really overjoyed to hear that we applied for the same job.
As you said, we were probly entering and exiting the same toilet cubicles on each other's heels back in the day.
Right, who's that fucking jock in the next cubicle?
Banging the door.
Cheers, John.
Cheers, mate.
Bye. Take care. Bye.